Through the mists comes forth RPGaDay! In the year 2021, RPGaDay comes back for its 8th year. A time in August when every day we tackle another question or topic by answering in a way that uplifts the gaming community and answers questions people might have about this crazy hobby of ours that serves to build the community and bring it up, that many of us make blogs about, video blogs, art, or great works. In celebration of the community of gamers, I welcome you to RPGaDay 2021. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob, the Dungeon Tutor, sometimes Omnisci, but whichever. I'm here today as part of RPGaDay 2021, and today is the 18th, which means it's time for the 18th topic, which is the word write. Now, as I write this, and I can't have done this any other time, as of right now, I have successfully written an adventure, given it to a publisher who will be publishing it shortly, which makes me extraordinarily happy. I can call myself an adventure writer, a freelance writer who has actually made money doing this job, which is very cool. And quite honestly, a lot of people write and never get anything with it. I myself have written notebooks full of stuff and never got anything to come out of it before. And I thought, as part of this, tangentially to the game, I think that giving good advice to people who want to write is useful. Quite honestly, I see a lot of people taking shots at it and not knowing what they're doing. So I thought I would, for this topic, put out some insights based on what I've seen, some pitfalls, some good ideas, and generally kind of talk about my own experiences. So first of all, writers write. That's an important thing. It's one thing to be, for example, a game master, and you entertain a small group of 3 or 4 or 5, 6, what have you. Very small audience. They may have a fantastic time, and you might have scripted that story down so that it perfectly speaks to your group. And they're the only ones who will ever know about it. That happens over and over again. Most people's works never get beyond their small circle in terms of gaming. And for some, that's fine. Oftentimes that's good. Let's face it, not everybody's tastes are universal, so some things that work with your particular group might not work anywhere else. And that's perfectly fine. Not everybody has to, knock it out of the park and be the next great writer. But always write your stuff down. I have reams of adventure notes and journals and stuff that is not useful going forward. I can't even remember most of the campaigns that are in there for what happened day to day to day. I might have who was there, what they fought, but as far as telling a cohesive story that could lead me to mine it for other ideas and things, probably not a lot. Because a lot of the stuff was written just like that. It was written spur of the moment, and I go with generally quite sparse notes, and sculpted for those players who were there. I don't think too many people would be interested in an adventure that I wrote for Mortimer and Frank My Ass, which were 2 people that I played with back when I was out of college. Those were their characters, and they wanted to play an evil game, so I let them be evil, and they were sacking a temple, and I think Mortimer sold Frank out, and it didn't go well. It was relatively short, and it was kind of brutal, but I don't like evil games anyhow, so I wasn't really interested in a long epic with those two. But I don't think too many people would be interested in a evil campaign where they raid. Maybe I should do that, actually. Anyhow. But writers write. Make sure you write things. If you want to really be a writer and create something, you need to start somewhere, and that is writing down ideas. Now, whether you're writing your own role-playing game, or you're writing an adventure, or you're writing a story, in my mind it comes down to the same thing that you do. First of all, write up a synopsis. Just summarize what you want to do so you can have a message that you stay true to. It may evolve over time and need pruning, but if you generally know the thrust of what you hope to accomplish, it helps to have some sort of a banner statement that's like I can always bounce back to. It's like, does this really meet my criteria for what I'm trying to do? If not, note it, but it might be a side venture more worthy for something else. Look at the long-term effects. Take a long view. For instance, my dice file game that I came up with, which is turned into the Spotlight system, is I wanted to create a game that uses dice to simulate everything, and the values of the dice imply the magnitude of the skill level or effectiveness of whatever it's representing. And characters' actions are summed up in a pool that is spent out as the actions progress throughout the narrative of the story. And they are refreshed periodically as time lapses, so that you can spend it out again. This lets people who are really good do a lot of things and budget when they are going to spend less effort on some things, to use the lesser value dice, and where they're going to pour most of their focus on the higher end dice. Kind of simulating, reality a little bit more. And you can only do so much. But that was the general banner perspective. So it's something that I wanted to constantly reflect as I was creating new rules to bounce back at that. Now, Dicefile is not published or anything, but still, it's something I'm posting out there as an example out of my own accounts. Now, that's the first thing. Then after that, of course, you have to start writing. You have to start filling in those things. But after that point, say you've written, and you've hopefully gone back with somewhat of a critical eye, pruned out the things that seem extraneous and unnecessary. It's an old expression that for engineers, the job isn't over when there's nothing left to add. It's when there's nothing left to take away. And I think modern game design fits that idea very well. It's not about adding new things and new features all the time. It's about paring things down to a point where it's the easiest to digest, the easiest to present in front of others, and generally allow others to kind of fill in after you, or expand out with your own source books and other things for different avenues of play. But come out with a bare bones idea first, flesh it out as much as you need to attract attention and explain your intent, and then that's when you're done with that project, and then can move on to something that maybe goes out in another direction you're interested in. That's, to me, that's the ideal. And I think most people kind of understand that, even on an instinctive level. Obviously, some people just put out a little bit, a bare bones idea and posit it, and that doesn't go anywhere. But that, oftentimes if you look at some of the more influential games that have come out, like Apocalypse World, if you look at that, it's all attitude, spit, and vinegar. And the mechanics are so simple that they are stripped down to the point where you can just about do anything with them if you just take the mechanics as they are and adapt them to anything. That's how Fudge came about, and then Fate kind of perfected that idea and made it so simple and streamlined that now anybody can write a Fate book. It's relatively simple to do, and it's really the mastery of what you do with that tells me if it's a great book or not. So that, to me, is absolutely essential. After coming up with your idea and then writing it, streamlining it so it's just what you need to speak to people and sell your story. Do the thing that you need to do with it. And if you bog it down with too many details, you're actually hurting yourself. Now, these days, people have options again, too. Back in the old days, your only option, really, if you wanted your stuff to get out in front of other people, is you had to go find a publisher. And there were several, but many of them have their own thing going on. Many of them have their own house writers, for instance, and really aren't interested in bringing someone else along. I've found this out myself. A lot of times, some people will say, oh, that's a really good idea. Tell you what, let us have a copy of it and we'll consider it. I'm not saying they're looking to bilk you or anything, but the fewer people that have your stuff that they might draw influence from, the fewer people, the better for what you're going to do. There's nothing worse than seeing somebody else put out something that's awfully much like what you did, but so many serial numbers have been pulled off that it's not your work anymore. You don't want that to happen. I'm not saying who does that or anything of the sort. I'm not going to cast aspersions, but I'm sure it's happened sometime in gaming history. I know that it's happened in literary history, and it wouldn't surprise me that gaming history has done that too. But if you go and you have something in hand and you hand it to somebody who is a publisher, if you're lucky, they might look at it and they might say, yeah, this is pretty good. And a lot of times they'll just say, okay, well, we'll buy your idea off of you. We'll treat you as a freelance writer. We'll get you some money, and then we'll take it over from there. If you're a writer, that's kind of common. They may talk to you as they're developing your idea to try to make it publishable, but a lot of times that's it. You get your name on something, yeah, and something comes out, but when it's done, you don't necessarily have a lot of control over what that's going to look like. They may add art to it. They may format it really nicely so it looks good. If you're lucky, they do all the good things for it. And they keep you in the loop because it was your idea and they want to kind of keep you as part of the process. That's nice when that happens. And if things really hit off and they pull you into the team and they want you to be somebody, that's the dream of so many of us, is to have a whole company behind you so that as you spin out more and more ideas to flesh out your game, that it's going to become this awesome, awesome thing. And that doesn't happen very often. Very, very, very seldomly. For one thing, a lot of these companies already have their core game system. So if you're a little role-playing game designer and you want to put out your game, it's already a crowded field, and a lot of these companies already have their own stuff. And they aren't always interested in adding another one to it. Also, a lot of the people who are looking at their stuff are themselves. They have their hands in something, so they're a little more disinclined to include you. But if everything works out, then who knows? You might have a chance at having something that will reach a much wider audience, especially with a company that already has deals with distributors who might actually get your stuff out in front of people in printed form. The dream of so many game designers. But that isn't always possible. Okay, it doesn't happen too often. So, these days, self-publishing, right? Self-publishing. Number one, if you've made your things. Now, there's a difference between writing and publishing. A sea change of huge difference, because writing means putting out great content. Publishing it makes it look good. It's adding art. It's putting in layout and design. Those can't be underestimated. If you look at the vast majority of things that are self-published, usually layout and design and art aren't going to be as much of a focus as published works have. And there's a reason why the published works sell better. Because you need to snare the eye. You need to make your stuff absorbable and interesting, and that is often done in layout with extra art and things to draw people in. That can't be underestimated, and shouldn't be. If you gave me a 30-page document, which is single-spaced, normal font, it could be very densely packed, but it could be the kernel of an excellent role-playing game, or the entirety of a good role-playing game. Or you let me buy your 120-page book with, double line layout, very nice art studded throughout, and charge me $30 more for it, I'll probably be inclined to get that one for $30 more in hardcover with art and layout that looks professional, because then it looks like a real game. It doesn't look like something that you would hand me in a binder and say, this is what I've done. The manuscript version, the 30-page in a binder, that's what a writer turns into a publisher. And then the publisher takes that and turns that into a processed book. So if you're self-publishing and you don't do anything with layout and you don't do anything with art, you're not going to probably get very much beyond a small, dedicated number of people. There are people who are always looking for the next new great game. And some of those people do look at those things that are perhaps ill laid out and have next to no art in them. But they're an important consideration of self-publishing. And there are a number of programs that make layout much easier than it used to be. But I'll be the first to admit, that's not my area of specialty. I'm a writer. I don't do layout. I advise people that you need layout and respect those people who do that. They charge a fee because they do work. That is work. Whereas what I do is, I love the art of creating. And it is work. Honestly, I do work hard at my writing. But it's not the same as, sweating out, making somebody's work make sense. Also, art can't be diminished. I am friends with several artists. Their job is tough. They live on dreams and fairy cake sometimes, but the good ones often get underappreciated for what they do. And if you look at Dungeons and Dragons, for instance, you look at the first edition AD&D stuff. They had art in it, sure. They had people like Errol Otis. They had Trampier. They had a number of artists doing black and whites, and some of their stuff looked rather cartoony. And then you go to second edition, and now you have these beautiful fine art pieces that are put throughout. This looks like a game to attract far more people, and it did. It really did. It's not subtle, the changes that have been made to gaming, but these days we understand. If you want people to take a more than a lingering look, you're generally going to look for more than this. You're going to look for stuff like this that evoke a sense of feeling, that put you in a place, in a world, and draw you in with wonder and interest. That's how you turn a work into a work of art. So, if you are ever going to self-publish, budget for that. Get an artist or get a couple of artists. Pass on what you want. Let them interpret what you tell them and turn it into art, and then pay them what they're worth. So, don't look for art on the cheap. Don't look for your cousin, who's surely very talented, doing it for $25 a picture and letting you publish it. And don't do that BS about, I'm giving you exposure. Any artist worth their salt hates that. No, pay them what they're worth. They're good folk. And the life of an artist can be a tough one, living from job to job to job. So, much love for my artist friends. They are worth it. So, self-publishing can be tough. Now, of course, it's a lot easier if you have money in your pocket. It's been said before that the best way to get rich is to already be rich. So if you have money in your pocket to afford this stuff, then you might think, well, I don't have money in my pocket. How can I get the money to make this? Aha! Crowdfunding. That's an interesting well that's been tapped. And quite honestly, there are some really good success stories that have come out of crowdfunding. Now, I understand, because I've kept an eye on the industry, that about 50% of successful games that are crowdfunded come from publishing companies that could already have published the stuff. It wasn't a question of if they would do it, it was when they would do it. But it's a lot easier when you have the money in pocket to pay for everything, and you know those sales are guaranteed right up front. And you entice people with a few stretch goals and things, but if you're smart, you don't break the bank. But out of the rest of them, a lot of them sell off of a really exciting video and a dream and some inclination that they will succeed, usually because of past successes. Very few dreamers just get in and say, hey, I've got this great and imaginative idea, and it works and it takes off. So a lot of times I'm of the opinion that you have to show me that you can do this first, and then I'll throw money in. I've always, it seems, have had problems when I go into something on just dreams. See Ernie Gygax's The Memorial Tomb for an example of that. I threw money in because Ernie was Gary Gygax's son, and I just wanted to support it and hope to see something really special come out of that. Hints that some of that stuff was going to come out of the original hobby shop, which I never had a chance to run in, and it failed. But, and this doesn't happen very often, a guardian angel came in, it was Troll Lord Games, swooped in, they said, we'll get this finished for you guys. They picked it up, they took the money that was left in the Kickstarter, which admittedly, and again, this is sometimes surprising, but the principles behind the Memorial Tomb did not squander. They just never spent it because they weren't capable of putting out that kind of work. But the money was still there, and they, I think it was, again, Troll Lord, basically said, okay, we'll take care of this from here. So they put their own people behind it, and they're getting ready to put it out, which is awesome. I might actually see it. I'd already written it off. But, yeah. That's a lot of the things that drive successful Kickstarters, to get you some money in your pocket so that you can make your things happen. So those are the two ways that people generally put stuff out. It's either by, going through a publisher or self-publishing in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just pay on demand. Pay what you think this is worth, in which case an awful lot of people are going to be paying 1 cent for something. But you will eventually find, and this is a kind of a phenomenon with human behavior, really. But you find that when you put in something where pay what you want, some people actually pay a reasonable amount. Some people, for a work that you put in, maybe say a couple of years worth, you came up with this role-playing game, you put it out as a pay for what you want. A lot of people are going to download it for a penny and take a look at it. Some people might come back and buy it again for $20, $30. When World of Goo first started this whole thing, a video game that they did this pay what you want. It's like, we have this game, it came out, it was okay, people liked it. Now we're just going to say, you know what? Buy it for what you want to pay for it. They found an awful lot of people paid a penny. A solid amount of people paid $1. Pretty decent chunk paid $2 to $5. Decent amount. A number of them actually paid the original retail price of $20. Some people paid more. Probably out of respect, this company would put up their stuff like that. But they found there were people who actually paid $50 or even $100 for World of Goo, which is not the most complicated of games. I have it. It's a good game, but it's not $100 worth. But pay what you will does weird things to people. So you could justify putting out something that doesn't look very good because it's not laid out right and doesn't have a lot of good art, and put it out as pay what you will, and you might make some money off of it. There will be some people who will pay a little bit more, but you're going to get mostly people are going to be buying it for a penny. Now, I'll tell you what I did. I'm still pinching myself on this one. I found probably the most unique publishing format I've ever found. And it basically revolves around the cult of personality that is a man who calls himself Phineas Goo, and the fine folks at Gooey Cube. Now, the folks at Gooey Cube did not start out to make a publishing company called Gooey Cube. Okay, they had a different company, but Phineas is a huge role-playing fan, and he's run games and so on. It makes me really sad because with all the time that he spends now writing for Gooey Cube, he doesn't have time to run games anymore, which is really sad. But what he's done is basically crowdsourced writing these days. And his idea is this: We're always looking for new ideas for GUI Cube. We have this campaign that we're doing, and even that they're starting to crowdsource in ideas for, because it isn't all written yet. So they're getting the most talented people they come across and adding them to these projects, which is exciting. But his idea is this: anybody can give us ideas. They can give us their content. We'll take it. We will compensate you for it, usually with art pieces or some downloadable or something like that. And we're going to make things that everybody has a hand in, which is genuinely cool, and I've never really heard of other people doing this on this scale, where just everybody is welcome at the table. Now, obviously, they have editing in, and they have, there's some things they just can't use. There are things that are too similar to other published works, and they're very mindful of copyright. You have to be. Otherwise, you're going to have a work that gets gutted out the moment it gets put out. And they're very careful not to do that. But they take all of these different people's ideas, and they're like, okay, thank you for your ideas. We will compensate you for them, and we're going to put them together, and we're going to make these great books. And their works are generally going to be like these great softcover compendiums here, with all beautiful art. They do fantastic things with their artists, and they're going to do a lot of things involving the localities that people are adding, monsters that came from the imaginations of all of these people, the way that their magics are structured. They're coming from different people that have ideas that they love. And nobody else does this. Nobody else is this ambitious about that. It's a massive amount of work. I don't know if they appreciated how much this was going to be, but they have no shortage at this point of people. And more people are welcome to come to GUI Cube and sign on. You can take it from me. I was on the periphery. They launched a Kickstarter so that they could produce parts 4, 5, and 6 of their darkest, or the Red Star Rising campaign. They just ran out of money for it because 2000 was horrible. 2020. So they did this rather than go to the conventions to sell their products like they were used to. And then as they met people, they just kind of opened up the nets and said, hey, we'll draw everybody in who wants to be a part of this. I heard about it through the Kickstarter, because I keep my ear on the pulse of, I pay attention to the Kickstarters. And I saw this and I was flabbergasted. And then I first digitally met Alphinius Goo, and he is such a force of personality that I couldn't help but like the guy. We have a lot of similarities. And he drew me in. And as we talked, as I joked, as I was an active part of their GUI Cube community and the Facebook group, the GUI Game Masters Den of Enlightenment, I threw in jokes and responded to memes and tried to be positive, and I was really happy to meet all these excited gamers. It's a very vibrant community. And eventually Alphinius came to me and he said, Rob, I like your sense of humor. I think we hit it off pretty well. How would you like to do something for me? And I'm like, okay. I'd already been part of their Discord server, and I contributed a few ideas for something they were seeking submissions for. I haven't seen anything from that, but, I think that's all getting published in one of their No, I think that one's been published in their Westverdestia encyclopedia. So, we'll see if anything comes of that. But he approached me and said, how would you like to be a part of the community that is building Darkenhaven, the very, very ambitious city that they're building? When it's complete, it's going to be the largest, most detailed fantasy city ever. And that's including such luminaries as Greyhawk, Waterdeep. I don't know if it's going to be as involved, but it will certainly be better served than the Invincible City, or the City of the Invincible Overlord. Because the stuff in it is going to make sense, it's going to be interwoven together. And they have a whole separate city directly underneath Darkenhaven called Gloomport, which is a port city that is directly beneath Darkenhaven. So it's this incredible project. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'd like to be a part of this. So I was like, okay. Got in. I was put in with other writers as part of one of the wards of Darkenhaven. And I, put in entries and stuff and tried to work with other people. And I put in a lot of the content for, if you get Darkenhaven, I have my fingerprints all over the Riverside. So this is the community with a college and just a vibrant, exciting place. And I had a hand in making that. So I'm proud of that, very proud of that. And after I put in my work there, Alphinius came to me and he said, I think you write in a way that I really like. I want to see more of it. And I have another project from the Kickstarter I would like your help with. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not doing anything. What I gave them, I didn't really consider to be freelance work. I just kind of did it as part of the team. He's like, I want you to write an adventure for me. Okay. Well, one of the things that we're pledged to do for this Kickstarter is to write several separate adventures, and there's one called A Strangely Gooey Holiday. It's going to be more of a Christmas theme. I'd like you to write it for me. And that blew my mind. I'm like, writers don't often get approached unless they're already celebrities of a sort. So, Wizards may have gone to Matt Mercer and said, hey, can we publish your Wildemount? People seem to really like that. That's an exception. That doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen to somebody like me. So he comes to me and asks me to write an adventure for him, and he's like, look, I've got art for it already, some things that we'd like to see, and it's going to involve me, my character Alphinius Goo, and it's going to take place in my basement, and this is the concept for it. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to do that. That would be great. And so I took the job, and I did it, and he's pretty happy with it by all accounts. And to the point where he's like, I want to keep involving you in what we're doing. It's really, I was at my lowest low at various points when I reached out to companies like Goodman Games, Troll Lord, Green Ronin. I went up and down going, hey, do you guys, I have an adventure here. I had my House of Wonders. I'm like, I have an adventure here. Is this something you guys would be interested in? And most of them looked at my manuscript and goes, no, not really. We're already way tied up with what we're doing. We don't really need an open source adventure. Even though we're working with 5th edition, we don't need another one. No matter how good you think it is, no matter how, you'll have no art for it. It's just a manuscript at this point we're not buying. It's like, okay. And so that was a common experience for writers, getting shot down over and over and over again. Now they can't shoot you down if you can self-publish, and anybody can self-publish, so at least you guys are spared from that. But Alphinius and Gooey Cube, I'll always have to be grateful for them because they want me. And I'm humbled for it. I mean, I know that Xayathe, the world of Gooey Cube, it's not my world. I didn't create it. And there are some parts to it that, I'm kind of, a few of the conventions I kind of roll my eyes at. It's very quirky. They've got their own quirks to it, but I'm so engaged by the story of the world, and I want to be a part of that. And I always want to keep being a part of this fabulous community. I want to keep writing. I would love to earn a living by my writing, but that's not really practical at this stage. But I love to write, and I'm really excited for my prospects. So I would say to you, game masters out there, if you have things that you think other people would like to see, number one, write. Don't just leave it languishing on a shelf like I've got notebooks full of stuff right behind me here, of stuff that I've written, never felt it was good enough, or never really developed to the point where I could put it in front of people. Write to completion. Just do it. Even if you don't get in front of somebody, don't leave half ideas everywhere like I have. But then, leave yourself open to the possibilities of success. Shop your ideas around, get people excited, point out the highs, and who knows, but writers write. and you need to try to find an outlet for that if that's something that sounds interesting to you. I got lucky with GUI Cube. If you're interested in contributing to a greater thing, then maybe GUI Cube is for you as well. But that's my story of what I consider to be some middling success. And, you know, that first check came, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually now a freelance writer for all the writing that I've done and all the decades that I've never gotten anything with it. Now I actually have something I can say, look, I've done something good, and I've earned from the sweat off of my brain and the blisters on my fingers. I've earned something, and I'm going to have something published with my name on it in the very near future. I'm so excited. So, and I'm glad that it's tied to Alphinius. He's a great guy. One of the more genuine people I've ever met in publishing, quite honestly, because he'll tell you how it is, but he'll sell you on his grand dreams. He's got such a force of personality. So, if you're interested, the GUI community is, the center on Facebook is the GUI Game Masters Den of Enlightenment. Feel free to, you know, check it out. I highly recommend it. They're such a great group. And Alphinius is always posting art from stuff that's coming up. Some beautiful pieces. His art is really top-notch from all the different artists that they work with. And if you are kind of looking around, my stuff will hopefully be sold for the holiday season. From the GUI Game Masters Den, there will be links. If you go to GUICube.com, they'll be selling that stuff online, both in PDF and in physical form, I believe. And yeah, you would get to see my stuff, including a picture of me as the evil mage Zixgramus, who is Alphinius's Zis partner, chess opponent, basically. So it was fun, and I got my picture on a piece of art, so which I'll show here. So, anyhow, thanks for joining me. This is a very frank description of the writer's experience these days. And I can actually say that I've had a little bit of success now from some bizarre circumstances, but feel so good about that. For those who have done it and who have succeeded in the old milieu, you know, there's still publishers out there, and I have to believe some of them have positions open for people of promise. Go get them. Some of them need fresh blood to bring new ideas in. You know, some of those ideas do get stale after a while. You need new people with fresh eyes to see the ways and potentials that you have. I'm afraid this video went a little bit long, but I hope people get something out of it. And if you yourself have any experiences, or if you feel that I'm wrong in something I've said, by all means, leave it in the comments below and we can talk it over. If this has inspired you to write something, leave something about your experiences. I'd love to hear it. And of course, if you like my stuff, I've got plenty of other videos. Feel free to like and subscribe and notify yourself when I put out new videos, and I'll have more. Certainly, I've got more ahead of me for RPGaDay, and plenty behind me from RPGaDay and all the other videos that I've done on Dungeon Tutor and Lair of Omnici. So thanks for joining me. Until that next time, farewell.